They called it the Purification Broadcast. From the marble spire of the Dominion flagship Crown of Avaris, the High Regent stood before 1,000 HoloLenses, his 4 pupils dilated to catch the gold of the system's twin suns. Around him, banners of silver flame rippled in artificial wind. Beneath those symbols, fleets of polished arrogance prepared to cleanse the last human anomalies from the Orion expanse. "Today," he said, voice transmitted across 47 sectors, "we end the final relic. The Terran strain, feral, obsolete, unoptimized. Their ships float like fossils, their minds clinging to chaos. We are evolution's peak. They are sediment beneath our ascent." Applause thundered through every frequency. Billions watched, convinced. Avaris propaganda had rewritten history long ago. The fall of Earth was legend, not loss. The humans who survived had been dismissed as scattered scavengers, hiding among dust lanes and forgotten moons. He turned to his staff. "Transmit the first volley order. Let the galaxy witness extinction restored." From orbit, 10,000 Dominion warships rotated into alignment, gold plating flashing against the void. Their formation curved like a crown, its arc aimed toward a single coordinate, a sector marked Terran Graveyard. Within it drifted 67 vessels of human make, dark, silent, unresponsive. No transponders, no emissions, only cold metal hanging in still geometry. "They don't even power their hulls," sneered his adjutant. "Perhaps they forgot how." Laughter rippled across the command decks. The High Regent raised one elegant hand. "Then teach them memory through fire," energy lances charged. Capacitors screamed. Through the main viewport, streaks of violet light cut across the stars, each one capable of carving a moon. The barrage reached velocity in less than a second. Then silence followed, broken only by the hum of their own systems. Sensors returned a calm screen. The human formation hadn't moved. No heat bloom, no shields, no signal. "Impact confirmed?" "Confirmed, High Regent." All shots landed center mass. A pause. The Regent smiled. "Then mark the timestamp. Let this be known as the hour humanity ended." He turned back to the camera drones, posture serene. "Evolution does not tolerate stagnation. The cycle turns," and an officer interrupted. "Sir, reflection spikes, massive flux, coming from target grid." Static hissed across the bridge. The image of the Terran fleet shimmered, hulls glinting with a faint blue haze. Energy readings rose, not outward, but inward, like gravity swallowing light. The sensor graph inverted itself. "They absorbed it," whispered the adjutant. "Impossible." "No alloy holds that yield," snapped the Regent. Numbers scrolled in cruel precision. 97% absorbed, 3% redirected. Through magnification, the Crown's viewport captured 3 Dominion cruisers suddenly liquefying, metal flowing like wax as redirected heat lanced back from the Terran ships' mirrored hulls. The human vessels didn't move, didn't signal, didn't gloat. They simply existed, unchanged, unmoved, unbent. A chill crept through command channels. Someone muttered a prayer, recalibrate targeting.
"All units, second volley."
Silence answered. Systems lagged. Capacitors failed to sync. The Dominion's golden formation hesitated. High Regent, their geometry. "It's..." On the holomap, the Terran fleet's positions adjusted by fractions of a kilometer, forming a perfect ring around the Dominion vanguard. Cold vectors appeared, marking trajectories none of the Dominion ships had detected until now. "Sir," whispered the adjutant, "they're aligning." For the first time, the Regent's voice faltered. "How many of them?" 67. All armed. The command deck trembled as distant engines ignited. The blue haze along Terran hulls brightened to a calm white. No comms, no warnings, just a single transmission appearing across every Dominion screen, written in their own tongue. "Evacuate your civilians. Leave this sector. You have 1 hour." A pause hung like a blade. The Regent's throat worked soundlessly. One line blinked beneath the message. Timestamp. Origin and designation code. Earth Command Node. Alpha Response Doctrine. Active. He stared through the viewport at the quiet fleet of ghosts. The galaxy had mocked them as relics. Now the relics were awake. The Dominion Armada held position above the ruins of its own arrogance. In the void between fleets, 67 Terran vessels drifted. No visible thrust, no comms chatter, no formation lights. Their hulls were matte obsidian, edges so sharp the stars seemed cut around them. Radiation scans returned static. Life signs, unreadable. The Dominion commanders whispered that the humans must be dead inside, vaporized by their own malfunction. But the silence lingered too perfectly. "Are they transmitting anything?" asked the High Regent, his tone clipped now, the earlier pride worn thin. "Negative, sire. Spectrum sweep from 0.3 to 600 terahertz. No signal detected." The comms officer hesitated, then frowned. "Correction. One line, carrier wave level. Not audio. Text burst." The Regent turned. "Display." On the main holo, 5 words appeared in Dominion Standard, white against the void. "Leave civilian sectors immediately. No identification tag. No coordinates. Just the sentence, pulsed once every 60 seconds. The Dominion Fleet Command laughed, softly at first, then louder, feeding on denial. "A bluff," one admiral said. "A death cry from wreckage." Yet across the thousands of ships, gunners found themselves hesitating over their fire controls. Civilians. The humans had used that word in the old treaties. It hadn't been spoken in centuries. The Regent leaned closer to the projection. "Send acknowledgement. Demand surrender confirmation." "Transmission failed," said the comms officer. "They're not receiving." The human ships remained motionless, perfectly aligned along the axis of the nearby colony system. 6 inhabited worlds, 50 million souls. The geometry was deliberate. If the Dominion advanced, any misfire could fall into civilian gravity wells. Retention stinger. They weren't blocking us. They were warning us. "Forward, scouts!" ordered the Regent. 2 wings. "Verify their condition." 20 Dominion corvettes advanced at sublight, shields raised. As they closed the 800-kilometer gap, their sensors began to fail. Short bursts of magnetic interference, harmless yet absolute. One by one, their instruments went black. "Visual only," came a scout's last report. "Hull markings visible. TSS Resolute, TSS Aegis, TSS Meridian, Old Terran Registry. They're intact." "No weapon ports open." "Continue," said the Regent, then static. All 20 icons vanished from the board, not destroyed, just gone. Their telemetry ended mid-ping, as though erased from space. Panic rippled. The Dominion fleet began to drift backward, micro-thrusters firing in nervous bursts. On every ship's holo, the same 5 words blinked again. Perfectly timed to the second. "Leave civilian sectors immediately. No aggression. No escalation. Just command." A Dominion tactician whispered. "They're hurting us." The Regent glared. "Nonsense. They're stalling." But his knuckles whitened on the console. "Charge plasma lances. I want them erased. All units charging." The glow of 1,000 reactors lit the darkness, turning it gold and violet. But as targeting locks formed, each Dominion ship's computer overrode its own firing solution. Warnings scrolled across their HUDs. "Civilian collision risk. Target path intersects inhabited system. They've altered our targeting algorithms," said the weapons chief, voice thin. "How?" "Those systems are isolated. They must have injected code through the telemetry loop during last scan. A fleet built on dominance had just been made blind. Minutes passed. No human voice followed. The 67 vessels stayed dark, drifting in an exact, unwavering line between the Dominion and the worlds behind them. On the High Regent's command deck, silence grew heavy enough to feel. Somewhere deep in his chest, an ancient instinct flickered. Fear, the kind that knows the end has already begun. He turned away from the viewport. "Stand down. Reorient formation. We'll regroup beyond the outer belt, sir." He didn't repeat it. As the fleet pivoted, the comms officer reported one last pulse from the Terrans. Same phrase, same rhythm. But this time, the last word blinked once in red before fading. "Now." The message stopped. The humans powered down again. They did not chase. They did not fire. They simply waited. The order came without hesitation. "Full spectrum barrage," the High Regent commanded. "Erase the ghosts. Energy built across 10,000 Dominion hulls." Plasma lances and graviton beams converged, their collective charge brighter than a small star. The sky itself turned violet-white, reflected across the surfaces of 6 nearby moons. Every Terran vessel remained still. At 002:17, the first wave hit. The vacuum rippled, waves of contained sunfire swallowing the human line whole. Radiation monitors on the Dominion flagship spiked past readable range. Pilots shielded their eyes as sensor screens whited out. The blast radius spanned 12,000 kilometers. When the glare cleared, the impossible waited within it. The human ships still stood, unaltered, unburned. Blue-white energy veils shimmered faintly across their armor. Their hulls had absorbed the strike and were cooling with measured precision. No distortion fields, no projected barriers, just seamless material integrity. "Impact confirmed," whispered the gunnery chief. But there, dissipating the charge, how much was absorbed? Approximately 97%. And the remainder? Redirected, vector unknown. The words had barely left his mouth when 3 Dominion flagships lit up like dying suns. They melted from the inside out, armor flowing like molten glass, internal reactors collapsing in synchronized implosion. The wrecks drifted silent, trailing vaporized gold across the void. On-screen telemetry scrolled in merciless precision. Absorption efficiency, 97.4%. Redirect vector, reversal arc, 3.1% collateral, 3 flagships. Neutralized retention stinger. Our fire became their weapon. A gasp rippled through the Dominion fleet. No commands, no theories. Only the realization that the relics had not merely survived, they had studied energy itself and rewritten the rules. "Cease barrage," the Regent snapped. "Recalibrate. Hit them with mass kinetic rounds, something primitive." But the Dominion's arsenal had been built for pride, not pressure. Their weapons were art, refined beams, controlled bursts, calibrated light. Against the Terran hulls, they were whispers in a storm. The tactical feed zoomed in. Along each Terran vessel's frame, small conduits opened, venting superheated plasma in controlled bands, releasing the absorbed energy like a heartbeat. The expelled light formed halos that pulsed once per second. A biological rhythm in steel. "They're bleeding power intentionally," said the sensor officer. "No overload risk. It's regulation, not reaction." The Regent's voice dropped to a near growl. "Then what are they waiting for?" The human ships began to move. No acceleration burn. No thrust signatures. Just displacement, instant precise. Each vessel shifted position by fractions of a kilometer, forming a new alignment, mirrored across all axes. The Dominion formation no longer faced them. It was enclosed by them. The Avaris fleet's targeting grids blinked with warnings. Every angle, every trajectory, intersected with Terran firing arcs. On the comnet, voices fractured into static. "We're surrounded, inside out. How are they?" The Regent silenced the channel. "They are machines built for extinction," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. The Terrans still didn't fire. Instead, one human ship, the TSS Meridian, flickered its running lights once. A code blinked in old interstellar Morse, an extinct system forgotten by most species. Dominion linguists deciphered it in seconds. "Stand down. Evacuate civilians. Defiance," spat the Regent. "Even in surrender." "Sir, that may not be a surrender." "Explain." "They're giving us a choice." The High Regent turned back to the viewport, to the motionless line of 67 relics, glinting with the absorbed fire of 10,000 modern warships. The void around them pulsed once more, energy release from the absorbed barrage echoing outward. Gentle, contained. The light touched the Dominion hulls like a warning. Sensors recorded a temperature differential. 3-degree rise across the entire engagement sphere, perfectly uniform. No damage, no aggression. Just proof. The humans were showing restraint. For the first time in centuries, the Avaris command crews said nothing. The silence wasn't strategic. It was reverent, fearful, confused. Beneath that silence, the Regent whispered to no one, "How do you fight a species that refuses to hate you?" No answer came. Only the hum of energy dying away into stillness. And 67 Terran ships, waiting. The silence didn't last. It broke with motion, pure. Measured, terrifying motion. From standstill, the Terran vessels shifted alignment, nose to void, their hulls dark as graphite. No comms, no countdown. Just the hum of mass displacement, the deep growl of inertia preparing to awaken. Sensors screamed first. Velocity readings spiked past expected thresholds. The Dominion's fleet AI tried to recalibrate, but each new figure shattered the next. "Sir, Mach 15 equivalent, and climbing." "Impossible!" barked the Regent. "That's atmospheric calculation. There's no medium to Mach 21-23 stabilizing at 25. The bridge lights dimmed as tracking computers failed to keep up. In the emptiness between stars, the Terran line blurred. 67 ships became streaks of gray and white, every vector precise, every thrust pulse identical. Shock waves formed without air, kinetic ripples through electromagnetic fields, folding the Dominion formation like paper. One instant, their crown-shaped fleet was symmetrical. The next, it was in pieces. Flagships spun off course, colliding with their own escorts. The inertia from nearby Terran passes crushed smaller ships under their own gravity wakes. Retention stinger. They moved like physics had chosen a side. The Dominion tried to scatter, but their command latency, 1.6 seconds between order and execution, was a death sentence. The Terran systems operated at microsecond precision. Every maneuver from Earth's relics carried intention, not destruction, but domination through control. The TSS Resolute passed within 200 meters of a Dominion destroyer. The pressure differential alone cracked the enemy's armor plating. Another, the TSS Vantage, cut through the formation's center, dragging inertial wake vortices that folded 6 vessels into debris clouds before their shields even registered impact. "Speed isn't just propulsion," murmured a stunned Dominion technician. "It's a weapon." Inside the flagship crown of Avaris, structural alarms howled. "Compensate inertial drift." The Regent roared. "Can't, sir!" "The spatial vector field is destabilizing. Our orientation's collapsing around their motion signatures." The holomap fractured into chaos. Terran trajectories wove through the Dominion formation in elegant geometry. Spirals, arcs, converging points of light that resembled mathematical art more than war. And then, the flashes began. Each Terran ship flared with brief ion bursts, releasing thin cones of pale blue plasma, marking zones of controlled destruction. Any Dominion vessel entering those cones vanished in silence, not from weapon fire but from shear forces ripping hulls apart at molecular level. "Estimate casualties," the Regent demanded. "Unknown, but at least 3,000 gone." "In how long?" 48 seconds, High Regent. No cheering, no rage. Just silence again, the kind that comes after realizing the hierarchy of the universe had been rewritten. The human ships slowed. Their motion stopped as suddenly as it began. All 67 hung in space, equidistant, radiating residual plasma like cold halos. Telemetry stabilized. Dominion survivors found themselves drifting amid a debris field of their own perfection. Ships torn open. Others simply pulverized by unseen forces, on all channels. A single human transmission appeared. Audio this time. A voice, calm and genderless, synthesized but unmistakably human. Acceleration doctrine complete. Engagement parameters remain non-lethal until further provocation. The message repeated once, then ceased. The Regent leaned forward, his throat dry. "Non-lethal." "Sir, they spared the command ships." "Why?" No one answered. The bridge crew watched the distant Terran formation expand outward, covering the surviving Dominion vessels in a sphere of calculated protection. The humans weren't pursuing. They were herding, forcing the Dominion backward, away from the civilian orbits behind them. The Regent's mind raced. "They're defining the battlefield," he muttered. "Every movement pre-designed. Every vector, restraint by design." A junior officer whispered, "That's not war, sir. That's choreography." The Regent didn't argue. For centuries, the Avaris had ruled through control, believing mastery of order was supremacy itself. Now, they faced an opponent whose silence commanded more obedience than their entire empire's doctrine. The Terran ships reoriented, forming a new pattern, a perfect spiral around the sun's equator. Each ship locking to an orbital vector at 0.01 variance. The energy signatures cooled to background radiation. Sensors logged one last datum. Relative speed delta, Mach 25.3 achieved. Deceleration error, 0.002%. The Regent watched the numbers and realized they weren't statistics. They were a message. Precision was humanity's language. Mercy was its accent. The countdown began without sound. No warning, no declaration. Only the flicker of faint blue glows along the Terran hulls. Each pulse synchronized, heartbeat steady, timed to an internal metronome the Dominion couldn't decipher. On the crown of Avaris, the High Regent leaned forward, eyes locked on the tactical map. What are they charging? Unknown signature. Not plasma, not fission. It's density flux, the sensor chief whispered. Their rail emitters are spooling mass, not energy. Primitive toys, the Regent hissed. Fire first. Burn the relics. But before his fleet could obey, the human vessels acted. From 67 dark hulls came a whisper of light. Thin, silver contrails streaking across the void at near relativistic speed. No explosive glow. No theatrics. Just mathematics in motion. Each rod, tungsten cord and magnetically sheathed, was no thicker than a man's torso. Yet it struck with the energy of a small asteroid. The first impact came at 0003, the last at 005, 12.312 seconds. In that span, 9,100 Dominion ships ceased to exist, retention stinger. They didn't destroy us. They deleted us. Sensors didn't show wreckage, only streaks of ionization where matter had been. Whole cruisers folded into glowing mist, their hulls reduced to molecular dust. Those further from the strikes weren't spared. Shockwaves of inertia tore through formation ranks, bending alloy and bone alike. The Crown's bridge shook under invisible pressure. Readouts spun red. We've lost spatial stability. Field collapse across 3 sectors. The Regent's composure cracked. Identify targets. What are they aiming for? They're not aiming, sir. They're pruning. On the tactical hollow, the Dominion formation was dissolving in perfect geometry. Outer flanks first, then middle ranks, leaving command ships untouched at the center. A deliberate harvest, each Terran vessel fired only once. 67 rods, 67 lines of annihilation. After the final impact, the void fell silent again. No victory transmission. No celebration. The human fleet remained still, rail cannons venting residual plasma in quiet arcs. Across the Dominion networks, every feed replayed the footage. Ships vanished before their sensors could register destruction. Pilots screamed into static that arrived too late to matter. Every commander saw the same timestamp, 312 seconds from first impact to last signal. Sir? Whispered the comms officer. They're broadcasting telemetry, our own. What? The feed switched to Terran bandwidth. Across every Dominion channel appeared a stream of numbers. Precise, time-stamped, unemotional. Firing solutions, kinetic yields, exact durations. Proof that the Terrans weren't boasting. They were documenting. Why send us this? The Regent asked, voice breaking. The answer came in the data's final line, translated automatically. We strike only when provoked. Civilians are not targets. Command response logged. Mercy's message. Precision as morality. The Regent turned from the screen. Around him, the bridge crew stared at nothing, their reflections pale in the glow of failure. Send counterattack orders, he said softly. Sir, our formation's gone. Engines offline in most sectors. Command nodes gone. There's nothing left to command. Through the viewport, the scattered remains of his fleet shimmered like faint aurorae. Matter itself still carried the echo of Terran impact, charged particles tracing invisible scars through the dark. The Dominion's empire, built on the illusion of invincibility, had been reduced to ghosts of ionized alloy. The Regent sank into his command chair. And they did this without hate, the sensor officer swallowed. Sir, one more transmission incoming. On every surviving ship, the message appeared again, calm as before. Leave civilian sectors, now. No demand for surrender. No claim of victory, just law, enforced by silence. For the first time in Dominion history, a war had ended before most of its soldiers understood it had begun. In the vacuum of that realization, the Regent whispered to the dying light, power restrained, that's what makes them gods. And the stars, once full of golden arrogance, dimmed beneath the blue shimmer of Terran aftermath. The footage spread faster than light ever could. From the core to the rim, every Dominion relay echoed the same impossible image. 10,000 ships erased in silence. 70 human vessels standing untouched in the dark. The broadcast had no narration, just raw sensor data, timestamps, and a chilling precision tag. Duration, 312 seconds. Casualties, 9,100. In the amphitheater of the Galactic Council, the delegates of 50 species watched the loop in disbelief. Gold banners of the Avaris Dominion hung limp in the recycled air. The sound system carried only the hum of processors translating the human transmission that followed the battle. No threat. No demand. Just a file. The council chair, a six-eyed Vor diplomat, adjusted her earpiece. "Run it again," she said quietly. The message opened with Terran insignia, an ancient crest of Earth Command, long thought extinct. The voice that followed was calm, low, and surgical in cadence. To all council powers, the Avaris Dominion initiated hostile actions within civilian evacuation corridors. Response enacted under Article 1 of the Terran Defense Accord. Engagement concluded. Combatants neutralized. Human fleets will not pursue. Human law will. Recorded evidence is provided for tribunal review. That was it. No boasting. No rhetoric. Just the language of order. Retention stinger. They didn't threaten the galaxy. They subpoenaed it. Across the chamber, a murmur spread through species that had mocked humanity as dust-era primitives. The Gathari whispered of hulls that absorbed light. The Rune delegates argued that no living species could perform mass-phase acceleration without violating thermodynamic law. And yet, the data was verified again and again. On the Dominion homeworld, riots began within hours. The people had seen their armada vanish, not in glorious battle, but in quiet erasure. Families demanded truth. Officers refused orders. The myth of supremacy cracked under the weight of recorded precision. The regent himself did not appear on broadcasts. His flagship, crippled and drifting, was reportedly under Terran escort, alive but no longer sovereign. In the council hall, someone finally broke the silence. "What, send legal notice?" asked the Keelan envoy. "Why not conquest? They could claim half the sectors uncontested." The chair turned toward the holographic Terran seal still hovering mid-air. Perhaps conquest was never their objective. The room fell quiet again. The data stream kept playing, infinite and cold. Flight logs, casualty records, the full battle rendered frame by frame. Humanity had given the galaxy its own indictment, signed, time-stamped, and clean. Hours later, a secondary transmission appeared on every comm grid. Simple and direct. The Terran Assembly reaffirms the doctrine of mercy. Civilians will not be harmed. Combatants will face lawful judgment. War is not extinction. War is accountability. Even the word assembly struck deep. It meant humanity was united, operating under law, not vengeance. In the diplomatic wings, analysts whispered that the message carried deeper weight. The humans weren't showing restraint. They were establishing jurisdiction. Article 1 of their defense code, said one aide. It implies a greater charter. Something planetary, the council chair nodded. They're not fighting for dominance. They're enforcing a moral order. Outside, ships across the core paused mid-departure to replay the Terran feed one more time. Crews stared in quiet awe as the cold beauty of it unfolded. The efficiency, the silence, the mercy. No slogans, no demands, only proof. By the cycle's end, 17 nations suspended military operations. The Avaris Dominion recalled all fleets. The phrase doctrine of mercy trended across 3,000 worlds, and far beyond the Council's reach. In the depths of human space, the Terran fleets remained dark, waiting. They had spoken once, through precision and restraint. The galaxy was still listening. The truth didn't arrive in a blaze of light. It arrived in data. The Council's analysts worked through the night, dissecting the Terran transmission packet that followed the Avaris defeat. Within the compressed stream, buried under harmless telemetry, they found something strange. Shadows in the sensor logs. 10 faint energy echoes, evenly spaced, invisible during the battle yet perfectly synchronized with every Terran firing sequence. At first, they were dismissed as artifacts. But when overlaid on the Dominion's own data, the pattern aligned with terrifying precision. 10 additional strike signatures. 10 fleets that never appeared. 10 ghosts that had already been there. Retention stinger. The battle wasn't fought alone. It was surrounded. On the crown of Avaris, still crippled and drifting under Terran escort, the High Regent sat motionless as his remaining officers reviewed the same revelation. Each pulse of energy, each inertial spike, matched to hidden vectors emerging from deep shadow wells. The battle that had annihilated his fleet had been a simulation run, not a desperate fight. They never needed reinforcements, said his adjutant, voice hollow. They were testing parameters. Testing? The Regent's eyes twitched. Their formation rotated every 52 seconds to compensate for gravitational drift, exactly the same across all 10 unseen fleets. Whoever commanded them wasn't reacting. They were measuring us. Silence blanketed the command deck. The Dominion's greatest military mind realized his species had been a controlled experiment. Meanwhile, in the Council's core chamber, the playback reached its final hidden layer. On screen, a reconstructed hologram formed, 10 spherical engagement zones overlapping the Avaris theater like petals around a seed. Inside each sphere, unregistered Terran vessels, power emissions near zero, identical trajectories maintained through the entire encounter. The chair leaned forward.
How many ships total?
Unknown, but estimates suggest nearly 670 additional Terran warships, cloaked through gravitic null fields. The visible 67 were just the visible tip. And they never fired? No, not a single discharge. They were there to observe. To ensure the First Fleet's containment, the room fell silent again. Diplomats shifted uneasily in their seats. The humans hadn't simply won. They had written a manual on how to win without revealing the full arsenal. Back aboard the Crown, one of the surviving Dominion engineers stared at the telemetry. They weren't aiming at our ships, he murmured. They were aiming at our sensors. Every volley blinded specific frequencies first. They could have destroyed us completely. Then why didn't they? Another asked. The answer came through the comm channel, flat, calm, and human. You were monitored under Accord's compliance. Termination thresholds not met. The Regent rose slowly, fists trembling. They are judging us. His comm officer swallowed. Sir, there's more. The data core shows timestamps that don't match our current standard. They were observing us for weeks before the engagement began. How long? 17 days, cloaked, inside our own perimeter. No one spoke. The weight of that number hung heavier than any defeat. 17 days, watching, cataloging, calculating. The Dominion had been dissected long before it dared to strike. Across the galaxy, Council worlds argued over the discovery. Some called it manipulation. Others called it mercy, that the humans had restrained their unseen power. The Terran response came hours later, a single line appended to every open channel. Hidden Spear Doctrine verified. Observation fleets remain inactive unless provoked. The message contained no coordinates, no confirmation of where those 10 formations now resided. Just a legal tag. Article 2, Accords of Conduct, Oversight Deterrence Authorization. Governments panicked. Defense budgets doubled overnight. Yet no one moved against humanity, because no one knew where to aim. On the crown of Avaris, the Regent stared into the dark. They didn't win a battle, he whispered. They taught us one lesson. His adjutant looked up. Which is? That the next war has already been watched. And far beyond known space, 10 Terran task forces drifted silently through the void, engines cold. Weapons inert, recording everything. The war did not resume. It simply continued, as if mercy had a timetable. When the Dominion's emergency fleets arrived, 6 hours later, 30,000 ships drawn from every border. System, they came believing the humans were weakened. From their first engagement, the wreckage of their comrades still glowed against the black. Yet the Terran fleet did not retreat. It waited. The new admirals, furious and humiliated, transmitted a single order: total engagement. No quarter. The response was instantaneous and cold. Every Terran vessel lit its hull markers in perfect sequence, 6-point blue halos, rippling like synchronized heartbeat waves across 67 ships. Behind them, the hidden spear fleet stirred. 10 formations decloaked at calculated intervals, enclosing the Dominion Armada inside a containment sphere 40,000 kilometers wide. Protocol 2, surgical engagement. Begin. From darkness came light. Railfire lanced across the void. No muzzle flash. No waste, only perfect trajectories. Each round carried encoded vectors to avoid gravitational interference with nearby colonies. Every kinetic strike was a sentence executed, precise and impersonal. Within the first hour, 8,000 Dominion ships ceased transmission. By the second, another 7,000. By the fourth, 9,000 more. Total, 24,000 vessels erased. And yet, the colonies beyond the battlesphere reported no debris, no radiation, no civilian casualties. The humans were destroying a fleet in orbit of inhabited worlds, and not a single city trembled. Retention stinger. They fought a war around hospitals and kept the lights on. Midway through the engagement, the Dominion command attempted a desperate retreat toward the civilian arcs. The Terrans didn't block them. Instead, they adjusted vector fields, allowing those vessels to pass safely out of combat zones. Drone medbays followed immediately after, Terran ships deploying autonomous triage platforms into debris fields still hot with plasma. Footage captured the site. Human med drones rescuing Dominion wounded while the war still burned around them. To the galaxy, it was blasphemy, war and mercy unfolding in the same breath. From the crown of Avaris, the High Regent watched helplessly. "They're curing the men they're killing," he whispered. "How do you face that?" No one answered. At the third hour, Dominion communication collapsed entirely. Command structures gone. Fleets drifting in blind panic. Terran coordination remained flawless, each unit firing once per 180 seconds. No deviation, no redundancy. Algorithms measured every detonation, ensuring kinetic dispersal remained below orbital safety thresholds. Terran command to fleet. Maintain non-lethal radius for civilian vessels. Proceed with sterilization of military grid. The command repeated like a mantra. Discipline in the place of wrath. By hour 5, the Dominion's last offensive wing, nearly 4,000 cruisers, charged directly into Terran formation, engines overdriven. Their intent was clear: suicide impact. The humans didn't fire. Instead, all 67 visible ships shifted position, opening corridors in their formation like gates. The incoming cruisers hurtled through empty space, colliding with each other in panic as inertial guidance failed. When their reactors imploded, Terran gravitic projectors caught the shock waves, compressing the detonations into harmless light spheres. What should have been the largest self-detonation in recorded war became silent aurora drifting between fleets. The 6th hour passed. No Dominion ships remained functional. Across the sector, transmissions ended in static. The Terran vessels dimmed their running lights one by one until the void was still again. Then came the message. Simple, factual, unboastful. Engagement complete. Combatants neutralized. Civilian loss, 0. Medical assistance en route. Drone barges flooded the wreckage fields, beacons shining white instead of red. They retrieved survivors, Dominion soldiers, medics, even officers. Each was treated, catalogued, and transferred under protection to neutral stations. On the Council's main feeds, the footage ran uncut. 6 hours. 24,000 ships. 0 civilians dead. Every delegate understood what that meant. Humanity hadn't fought a war. They had demonstrated a doctrine. In the ruins of his empire, the High Regent lowered his gaze. "They destroyed our strength and preserved our weakness," he said quietly. "That's not victory. That's correction." Above him, Terran medbays glowed blue against the remains of his fleet. The war was over before the last wound was closed, and the galaxy, watching, finally understood. The relics of Earth had not returned to conquer. They had returned to teach restraint through fire. The battlefield had gone quiet. Only the slow drift of wreckage marked where pride had burned. Terran med barges moved between debris clouds like shepherds through smoke. Their hulls glowed a soft white, marked with the sigil of the assembly, an open hand encircled by 12 stars. Drones extended surgical beams, cutting through twisted metal to pull survivors free. Dominion soldiers blinked into the light, expecting death and finding medics instead. No chains. No interrogations. Only triage. Within 48 hours, over 3 million wounded from across the Dominion front had been evacuated into Terran-controlled hospitals. Each was fed, stabilized, and informed, calmly, that they were now under the protection of Terran law, retention stinger. They conquered through kindness. Enforced by math, the Galactic Council demanded clarification. Why mercy after such annihilation? Humanity replied with a single decree, transmitted in all known languages. Justice is not vengeance. Survival is not dominance. The war is concluded. Those who ordered atrocities will face judgment under Article 3 of the Doctrine of Mercy. The words carried weight beyond law. They carried finality. Captured Dominion admirals were placed aboard. Terran ships under constant medical care. No cells, no torture. Instead, they were given access to full recordings of the battles they had ordered, complete with casualty data. Each watched the number climb, 90-100, 24,000. Civilians spared, 50 million. Then came the legal briefings, read by a neutral AI in calm tones, explaining the charges. Crimes of conquest, endangerment of civilian life, and violation of sentient conduct accords. Some admirals wept. Others sat in silence, hollowed by understanding. On the Council's public network, live feeds showed the trials. No spectacle, no humiliation. Just process. Judges in black and white robes, representing multiple species, convened aboard the Terran flagship Aegis, evidence presented, verdicts rendered. For the first time in galactic memory, war crimes were prosecuted not by the victor's anger but by their discipline. The word Alpha, once the Dominion's sacred emblem of superiority, began to fade from broadcasts. Planetary governors removed it from banners. Civilians stopped using it in greetings.
Within a week, the name itself became taboo, a monument to arrogance dismantled by restraint. On a colony world once ruled by Dominion decree, a survivor of the battle looked up to see Terran medships entering orbit.
Children pointed at the descending vessels, their hulls marked with the word Mercy. No soldiers disembarked, only doctors. In one of the broadcast interviews, a Terran officer was asked why humanity spared so many. His answer was calm, almost mathematical. Because extinction solves nothing. Only choice redeems. The clip went viral across 2,000 systems. Back aboard the Crown of Avaris, the High Regent, now a patient rather than a ruler, sat beneath Terran medical scanners. He had refused food for days until a medic told him quietly that hunger was not protest, only delay. He finally asked, "Why did you not destroy us?" The medic paused. "Because once someone didn't destroy us." The Regent said nothing more. He watched through the viewport as a Terran hospital frigate aligned beside his ship. Inside, he could see thousands of his people being treated by human hands. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Alpha is gone." In the Council archives, the Doctrine of Mercy was entered as a binding charter, ratified by every surviving nation except the Dominion, which now existed only in memory. Human fleets dimmed their lights. Med barges still moving in quiet lines through the ash of war. No victory parades. No banners, only care. And in the silence that followed, even the stars seemed to bow. The war ended quietly, but peace did not follow. Weeks passed. The Dominion's remnants signed accords. Their fleets disarmed under Terran supervision. Across the galaxy, repair stations filled with survivors who whispered the same phrase, "The relics spared us." Yet amid the rebuilding, the Terran ships did not return home. They remained stationed along the edges of known space, motionless, silent, their engines dimmed to a patient glow. In orbit above the scarred world of Valis, the TSS Meridian floated like a monument. Its captain, Commander Avari Hale, stood before a data screen filled with stellar noise. "We've confirmed the anomaly?" The technician nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Not background radiation. Pattern repetition every 9 minutes. Origin, beyond mapped rim. Human transmission? No, not ours. Not anyone's." Across the Terran network, the data spread fast, An electromagnetic pulse repeating at 0.02 Hz, structured like language but older than any known syntax. The signal formed geometric harmonics, fractal in rhythm, each pulse identical to the last. It wasn't a message. It was a heartbeat, retention stinger. Something out there had just woken up. The council demanded analysis, but the humans said little. The doctrine of mercy had already proven they did not speak in haste. Earth Command simply released a new bulletin, 2 sentences signed by the same calm authority that had ended the war. Outer Rim lattice activation confirmed. Terran fleets reorienting for intercept. The galaxy watched as humanity's warships, still covered in battle scars and scorch marks, turned away from the worlds they had just saved. Each vessel adjusted its heading by fractional degrees, aligning toward the uncharted void beyond Sector Epsilon, where the last stars gave way to nothing. One by one, blue engine flares ignited. The fleet began to move. Observers noted no formation orders, no fanfare. It was as if the entire armada shared a single silent thought. Something calls. We answer. In the council chamber, diplomats argued over what the signal meant. Some believed it to be a remnant of the extinct exterminator species, machines that once scoured galaxies bare. Others feared it was a weapon, ancient and waiting. But one truth settled across every transmission. The humans had known this might happen. The phrase Alpha Response Doctrine reappeared in their internal documents, now replaced with a new designation, Lattice Contingency Protocol. Commander Hale studied the signal again. Each pulse resonated through her ship's hull like a slow, distant breath. If it's alive, she said quietly, it's bigger than anything we've ever met. Her first officer frowned. Then why answer it? She looked at him, expression unreadable. Because it's what we do. We face what others run from. Outside the viewport, the black stretched endless. The other Terran ships fell into silent formation. Thousands now, not just the 67 relics that began this war. Their hulls reflected faint, lattice-pattern echoes from the signal source, like ripples of light dancing across steel. Transmission strength rising, the technician murmured. It's adapting to us, Hale nodded once. Then let it know we heard. She keyed a single command. Across the void, every Terran ship flashed its running lights in sequence. 12 pulses, deliberate and slow. A reply, the signal paused. Then for the first time, it answered with a new tone, low, harmonic, vast. No translation existed for it, but every sensor logged the same phrase in Terran Standard, acknowledged. Commander Hale closed her eyes. Then the horizon calls again. The fleet's engines burned brighter, slicing through the dark toward the edge of the galaxy, where the maps ended. And the unknown waited to be met by the only species that still remembered mercy,